There are 5 terms that are important to actually calculate to know if the commercial property, and the expenses are the operating expenses. What is the operating expenses? The other term that we actually consider and analyze before entering the commercial property is a cash on cash return. The other term that we use to analyze the commercial property is a cap rate. Today we want to talk about the terms that we need to analyze the commercial property. There are 5 terms that are important to actually calculate to know if the commercial property is a good property to invest at or no. The first and most things is income and expenses. For every commercial property we have income. The income would come from the rent or the laundry or a lot of other things that you might have an income from the commercial property. And the expenses are the operating expenses. What is the operating expenses? The operating expenses is the expenses that you need for operating the commercial property, like maintenance fee, property tax, insurance, and utilities. We actually calculate that and we minus that from the income. The income of the property minus the expenses give us the net operating income. The net operating income is a very important term in calculating and actually analyzing the commercial property to see if it's a good property to invest at or no. Once we have the net operating income, if we subtract the mortgage payment from the net operating income, we can find out the cash flow. The cash flow is the money in commercial property that you actually have it after subtracting all the expenses and the mortgage payment. So if your cash flow in a commercial property negative, you don't actually invest, you don't want to go and invest in that commercial property. But if you have a positive cash flow in commercial property, you know that is a good property to invest at. The other term that we actually consider and analyze before entering the commercial property is a cash on cash return. The cash on cash return is a return that you have on your money when you invest in commercial property. How do we calculate the cash on cash return? In order to calculate the cash on cash return, we have to calculate the annual cash flow. So if we have a cash flow and we have it annually, and we divide that by the down payment, by the money that we put in the property, we can calculate the cash on cash return. The other term that we use to actually analyze the commercial property is the cap rate. The cap rate is actually tell us if the property that we invest in has a good return or bad return. Usually if the cap rate in a property is more than 8%, we would say this is a right and good property to invest at. The other term that we use to analyze the commercial property is a cap rate. Usually if the property has a cap rate of 8% or more, we would say this is a good property to invest at. How do we calculate the cap rate? To actually calculate the cap rate, we should actually divide the net operating income divided by purchase price. So if we divide the net operating income by purchase price, it gives us the cap rate. Usually, when you want to invest in a commercial property, if the cap rate is very high, it means that is not a very good area to invest at, but it gives you a very good return. But if the cap rate is low, usually that property is located in a good area, but it has a lower return. So you have to decide to know if you want to invest in a property which has a higher cap rate and gives you actually better return, but it's located in a bad area, or you want to invest in the area which is good and has a lower cap rate and it gives you a less return, but you're actually located in a better area. So this is what you have to actually consider before investing in commercial property. So what property we usually invest at, and what are these numbers should be for us to actually invest in that property. Usually if the income minus expenses, so if your income minus expenses is more than 1, we actually would say this is an income producing commercial property, and this would be a good property to invest at. The net operating income is another term that if the net operating income minus mortgage payment is more than 1.2, I would say this is a good property to invest at. So the net operating income minus mortgage payment, if it's more than 1.2, we would say this is a good property to invest at. The cash flow of the property that you want to invest at should be positive. So this is another term that we have to consider and we have to analyze. The cash on cash return, usually the property that we invest at usually has a cash on cash return of more than 12%. So if you calculate the cash on cash return of the commercial property and you come up to the number which is more than 12%, we would say this is acceptable. This is not a very good number, but this is acceptable to actually invest in commercial property. The cap rate is another term that we actually use to see if this is a good investment or no. If the cap rate is usually more than 8%, we would say this is a not bad property to invest at. And usually if the cap rate is around 10 to 12%, we would say this has a good return. But usually those cap rates is for the property that's located in a bad area, and usually that area is not very much safe to invest at. So once you have all the terms, you have to analyze the commercial property and you have to find out if this is the right property to invest at or not. Thank you very much for your time.